the beginning of this year, I don't know whether you're aware of my work really. I do deal with violence as an issue in my work, and that is a big part of what I do in terms of what comes out of it and what is where it originates from. So violence really is a very big part of my practice, and that is something which makes me really think and kind of contemplate why and how and all that, you know. So the beginning of this year, I did think of it. I was like, okay, I'm coming from where Gandhi came from, really, and the idea of non-violence and ahimsa and things like that. So I wanted to kind of explore that and understand that. And when I was doing all that, and I was reading and searching and things about non-violence and the idea of just being and not reacting, really, those are things which I'm not very familiar with. So when I started doing that, I wanted to kind of understand how I can get into it, really, to understand that ahimsa and the idea of being quiet and yet kind of move forward. And that's when I came across the charkha, and I was very keen to understand the idea behind it, why Gandhi brought in. We all understand it is because of the industries and the whole thing about self-dependence and employment and everything. But to me personally, it is turning out to be a very meditative experience, something that is kind of calming me down.
Right.
So the non-violence I'm experiencing through this really, where it takes me is something I really don't know right now. What I have done this year is that I've traveled to places of violence, and I've taken my charkha with me, and I've tried to do my meditation in those places and see how it goes and how I react to the space after the spinning. So this is what I'm really doing this year. That I'm going to places. I was in Mexico, where there were some places where there were massacres and bloodshed, and then I will be going to Ipers, where there are those mass graves of World War I. I will be taking my charkha there and see how it kind of brings the change in me. So it is a very personal thing that I'm doing, really. And being here in South Africa, I really wanted to bring it with me and see how it really moves further. And here, it's really beautiful is that I am working around colors, and I'm coloring the threads here, and the colors are the red, black, yellow, brown and white, and that's what I'm really working around here in South Africa. So that's interesting. So right now that I'm talking to you and I'm doing this, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. You need to meditate. You really have to be calm and cool and there to be able to. So, I mean, a kind of a conversation or anything that's surrounding you, the space really drives what I'm doing here,
Right.
you know, in a way. So,
But for you, this is an inner journey more than the fact that there is violence in the world and we need to do something about this.
see, I'm an artist. I can do what I can feel and experience, and I can just do that. But yeah, that's the thing that we all know. There is something happening everywhere. There is an uprising happening every second day, somewhere or the other. So I was thinking that when would be the day when I kind of conclude my this project? But I don't think I will ever conclude it really, you know, because it just kind of there's no dearth of places in the world which are subjected to some kind of violence. So
But coming from India, do you see India as being more violent as a society or just violent in a different way?
see, that's very subjective. That what you're really talking about violence in the society. How would you? I mean, I really don't know what you're saying as violent as society.
In the sense that we have the violence of untouchability, we have the violence of gender violence, we have the violence of children dying of malnutrition, we have the violence of corruption. So there's a whole set of it.
I think no society is kind of without it. You know, I was in Mexico, and there I was again, I was surprised how things were. Like,
Hmm.
there is still that kind of a divide between the Mexican Indian and the whites, So there is a kind of a thing which is there, and the layers are there in the society everywhere. Whether it's India, whether it's here, whether I was in New York doing the performance, I think
Right.
it's kind of everywhere. So we can't really say that it's India really. There again. But yeah, I guess one interesting point that came out of the whole project was that when I was outside of India, I kept going back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I was comparing things. I was kind of thinking of things that have happened in history and are still happening. So that does happen when you are outside your own zone, really, when you're outside your own place. Then you think of it and kind of connect with it in a different way as you are when you are in the system, really. So I guess, yes, that it does make you think, and it does, yeah. So it does. But in terms of violence in societies, I think it is
Right.
everywhere. So I wouldn't just say that it's only in India.
Thank
In
you.
terms of your experience in Mexico, what sort of impact do you think you made there? Or have people told you you've made an impact?
I am going there again next year to do a larger performance. There is a square called Tlatelolco Square, which in 1968 was subjected to a lot of violence because they had a mass massacre of the youth who were demonstrating there. So that square, I did a performance in that square, and there is a museum, Tlatelolco Museum there for that particular event. So I'm going back there and I'm doing another performance engaging the people of Mexico and kind of doing a collaborative work with them. So I guess there has been a kind of a dialogue that we had, which is kind of growing now. And I kind of connected to the massacre, and then I thought of the massacre that we had at Jallianwala Bagh. I mean, the thoughts and the reasons were completely different, but the situation of how it happened was something which I kind of connected it to. So when I go back to India, I will do a kind of a similar performance at the site of Jallianwala Bagh.
And in terms of